3, 2, 1. Can you hear me now? Can you see me now? Live from the Blanco Lirio Global Headquarters. Plane spotting once again with Jerry at BigJet TV with a little better setup. Let me know how this looks and how this works. We're testing some new, better technology here. Jerry Dyer's BigJet TV with his permission. You are now a dude watching a dude watching a dude watching airplanes live at London Heathrow this morning, Saturday morning. Watch those wires, Pete. How's that picture? We got a much steadier picture today by public demand. And we'll give you a little more background commentary along with Jerry from BigJet TV. Check those cumulus, what do they call those mamulus clouds over London Heathrow right now. So we're live at London Heathrow. I think this is another storm, a named storm. I think this is Jorge. Is that correct? Yeah, if somebody can jump on the weather tracker radar, give me a weather update. What's approaching here at Heathrow this morning? And I'm going to go jump on the flight tracker and see who's up next to bat. Yeah, we're running the steady cam this morning for a much cleaner picture. On all of our premieres, British Airways, what do we got next here? 7-3? Note the two-wheel trucks on the 7-3. Beautiful. Greaser landing. Wet runway, you don't always want a smooth landing like that on a wet runway, but when it's wet, you got plenty of runway, and you grease it on like that, those are the smoothest landings you'll ever have. So smooth, yes. Look at these.
So yeah, you are. Oh, look, we got coffee.
Coffee for Jerry at BigJet TV. Jerry, if you're unfamiliar with Jerry at BigJet TV, let me turn down the sound bar for a second here so I don't have to yell so much. Jerry at BigJet TV is a great plane spotting fan. I think he's based there in the UK. He travels all around with this rig. He goes out in incredibly horrible weather conditions and does these live plane spotting events. And you join his channel, and then you can jump in the live chat with him and be part of his plane spotting TV channel. Now, what I'm trying to want to do with Jerry is hook up with him so that I can be a commentator with him live as well. Aeroflot. Everybody's getting smooth landings today. They had some pretty good wins earlier at Heathrow, but now it looks like the winds are down the runway, so there's no giant crosswind issue today at Heathrow. At least not at the moment. So get over there to BigJet TV and tell them you come over from the Blanco Lirio channel, and somehow me and Jerry have got to get this together so we can broadcast live together. Jenny, is there any way we can turn up that light overhead?
Yeah.
Now, let me show you. Yeah, who's up next, Jenny? We got some smaller jets coming in. What is that? Another A320 coming in. We got somebody on final right now. 320s. A series of 320s coming up next to bat. Now maybe I should be standing over here out of the way. Yeah, thanks. Can you still see the TV screen okay, or is that too bright out there on the live broadcast? What we got next here? Another 320? Yeah, another 320. Tell by the wingtips here and the general shape of the airplane. round engine nacelles as opposed to the flat ones on the 777, just a dual set of trucks. Boom, good landing. Everybody's pulling off good landings today because the conditions are favorable for good landings with the winds primarily down the runway right now. Let me check the latest METAR for Heathrow. The lighting's perfect. Good. Okay, thanks. Let's see. Winds 260 at 21 knots. At 50 after the hour. We're landing on runway 27 here at Heathrow.
And the first officer, Hannah Parton, and she said, when I went up on the top, she yelled.
So the crews are working around this weather, arriving into Heathrow. I think they're using, stand by, let me figure out the arrival they're using right now.
Thank you very much, guys, for
They were holding at Ockham,
to welcome me on board the aircraft, Mississippi.
but now they are, what is the name of that VOR? Lambourne VOR up to the northeast, I believe, is the arrivals they're coming in now. Let me give you a breakdown on these arrivals into Heathrow. Well, actually, let me give you, see if I can get you a picture off of Flight Tracker, the Flight Radar 24. Yeah, here we go. Now let me see if I can put this up in front of the camera without screwing up everything. First, let's watch this. Wow, look at that. That's the 787. I have no idea what airline that is. Look at those wings bend. Bimming. 787. Boom. The truck set down. There's the reverser doors right there on the 7.8. And of course the ground spoilers all deployed. The high aspect ratio wing I often talk about, that's the long, slender wing, much like the sailplane, much like the Radian glider I'll show you here in a second. Okay, I'm going to pop this in front of there, see if this messes you up too much.
Oh, you're about to step on the wire.
So they're doing this, I believe this is the Lambourne arrival. They bring all the arrivals into here. They set them up in a holding pattern here in the to the northeast of London, and then bring them in on a curving, power-off approach into London. And let me talk about that for a second. Jenny, can you hook me back up there, all those wires? Coming into London to Heathrow, it's a very noise-sensitive airport. And so in order to keep the noise down on these arrivals, they want you to come in with a planned descent that permits you to do that descent with your power off, idle power, and glide all the way down and in on a curving turn onto final without having to add any power. You don't want to add power because they've got noise sensors set up all around the airport here at Heathrow, and those noise sensors, they know exactly who you are when you come over using all this technology that we're using today, and they will fine you. They'll fine your company if you set off an excessive amount of noise on your approach into Heathrow. So if you blow it, blow your descent and have to add power, the noise sensors will be set off and they will potentially fine your airline. Now, what do we got here? Another 7.3, bobbing and weaving a bit. Arizona. Gretchen, that's not a 7.3. What do we got here? Note how the trucks are rotated back, set of four wheels. Boom. That's the old 7.5, isn't it? Thrust reversers open. Great job, BigJet, panning these shots. Ground spoilers deployed. So in order to do this descent into Heathrow without adding power, the controllers will give you a distance to expect to the end of the runway. Even though it's a curved approach, you can't just look at a straight line distance. They'll give you a distance to expect your final turn to the airport. Look at him stacking them up out there. He's not quite got his gear down yet. Well, Jerry's got a great telephoto lens going. And so you have a chart in your Jepson book that tells you from what distance the controller gives you and what altitude you are currently at. Your chart will tell you what rate of descent to establish to do a perfectly idle descent all the way into Heathrow without having to set off the noise sensors at Heathrow. And then you need to update that rate of descent all the way around and in, continuously update it, and make sure you're going to make your profile without having to add any power. What we got here? That's a small one. Let's bring Jerry back up here a bit.
Crosswinds on everything.
Well, there's not much crosswind right here at the moment, I believe. The wind component is mostly down the runway. Again, if you're just joining us, southwesterly, Jerry says, and the runway is to the west, runway 27. Looks like some birds were out there. High rate of descent. Break that rate of descent. Flare. And boom, just touches it down. Yeah, that was a quick flare to descend to land. So you want to arrest that rate of descent. When I use the term flare, that's exactly what I mean. Flare to land, that last bit of up elevator to grease that on the runway. To break that rate of descent, which could be 600 to 800 feet per minute, break that rate of descent and get a smooth landing on it.
Australia. Welcome to you, all you.
So if you're just joining us live here on the Blanco Lirio channel, you are now a dude watching a dude who's watching a dude landing live at London Heathrow. BigJet TV here, Jerry Dyer, and his great plane spotting broadcast that he does. And today it's, I think Storm Jorge is blowing through London now. Winds 220 at 16 knots. Great. Thanks for the update on the winds. Looks like another 787. Look at that modern bending wing. You hardly need any winglets on these wings because they've got so much natural bend to them with all the composites. Look at these ailerons working inboard here. Trucks, boom. Oleos completely smashed down the suspension. Thrust reversers open. Ground spoilers deployed. The scalloping on the 787 is another effort to...
Please don't get upset. It's not because I'm being rude or anything like that. Not ignoring anyone's comments. It's just...
is another attempt to reduce the noise pollution from these aircraft.
Andy, aviation, ASD aviation, poor old Andy. You were with us in Toulouse, you will know that poor guy literally...
I like listening to BigJet's Cockney accent. I believe that's a Cockney accent. What do we got here? A380. Look at this beluga whale coming on in. Big and stable.
Your long haul...
Big.
Very big. The A380 is soon headed for the scrapyard, it appears. It's just been a marketing problem getting that many people that want to go to one destination at the same time. It was a big gamble on the market, and it looks like giant jet scheduling like this is just not simply going to work.
Right, now this, folks, should make a mess of the runway in terms of inboard reverses. Only inboard reverses on the...
Look at all those trucks, including trucks in the center of the aircraft. Break that rate of descent, boys! Oh! Smashed it on! Oh! Yeah! Tell him, Jerry! Well, he's got reversers inboard, but I don't see the outboard reversers. Oh, I'll tell you why.
D-rated. That's unlike Emirates, but wow. He came down hard and
he smashed it in.
Right, man. You would have felt that on board the aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, frequent travellers will know exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about the lurch, where they're applying the brakes, and of course the rudder
Look at that wing.
as well is causing the aircraft to lurch left and right. Oh, here we go. Look, smoky startup possibly with this 767.
Okay, let me talk about that. The use of the thrust reversers there on the 380 on that particular landing. The A380 is so damn big. I cannot get
for
this.
smoky startups.
It's so
I
big,
think, something to
and
do
the
with
runway
the
is only so wide. They're not going to widen the runway for these A380s, so they want to use the inboard thrust reversers only and avoid the use of the outboard thrust reversers to avoid entering FOD into those outboard engines. So the aircraft is so big, those outboard engines are so close to the edge of the runway, they could potentially FOD them out using the outboard thrust reversers. They get plenty of reverse thrust braking action from just the inboard engines. Now, Jerry gets me up so early in the morning, I don't have a chance to shower or shave, so I got to wear my hat.
What did I say?
Look at that, smoky startup, he's right.
Hey! Oh my goodness me! Now, you know, if you ever wanted an example of a Smoky Pratt Whitney startup, there it is. Wow, look at that.
Now you're, as a passenger, you're potentially breathing some of them exhaust fumes, and you can certainly smell it. Yeah, do a burnout in a donut in the parking lot there. But in these cold, wet weather conditions, you can get these very easily. Get these smoky starts. Got to get the temperatures up to burn that fuel thoroughly, and right away it clears up. But it does stink a little while as a passenger. You can often smell that depending upon where the wind is blowing and where if that exhaust fumes gets into the air inlet system into the system. And the other problem is the packs, the air conditioning packs. Turn this down again. The air conditioning packs are turned off during engine start because the air is being used for the start of the engines, and so you're stuck with whatever air is in the cabin. So it's not necessarily always drawing in that bad air, but you're not getting any fresh air either. The recirculation fans are just going on. You're recirculating whatever air is in the Pete's in the camera, is in the cabin. Say hi, Pete.
Hello.
I got to take these boys dirt bike riding here soon this morning. When these engines are running on the ground, a fun thing to do as a passenger is watch as they taxi around in wet conditions, and you'll see this little tornado form right here at the inlet of the engine as the low pressure from the inlet of the engine draws up this moisture. And you can see the problem with a FOD, if there's ever any FOD out here on the taxiway or runway, the potential of sucking it up into the engine. There goes number 2 engine, a bit of a smoky start. It's your Jerry. Smoking is not permitted, he says.
Yeah.
Here comes the Iberia.
Yeah, man. Love that.
What aircraft type? 319. Iberia 319 on final. I got Jenny calling the batters as they come up to bat on Flight Tracker 24 radar. Flight Radar 24.
Stand down on the one.
Is he getting in the pattern?
Now, opportunity. Going for black tea. I'm not going to put any milk in it.
Jerry's having a spot of tea. He's been out here all morning in these outdoor weather conditions. Where I watch from the comfort of the living room here in Northern California, Jerry's out there braving the weather at Heathrow. What do they say the temperature is out there at Heathrow today? It's probably got to be close to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, I need some more of this. Is this water, Jenny? I gotta freshen up the water here. Wear my voice out before 9 a.m. All right, thanks, Sean. I need some more. Yeah, live chat is on this morning here on the Blanco Lirio channel, but I also want you to support BigJet TV's channel as well, because he's the one that's doing all the hard work out there. I'm just running my mouth here in my living room this morning. It's colder than 41 degrees, thanks. And if we can get an update on the winds there in Heathrow as well would be good. What do we got next? Looks like British Airways A320 coming up next. The delicate balance of getting all these aircraft moved on the ground, you can see from behind here, this is what causes more delays than anything else. If you get a problem with an aircraft on the ground, that just screws up the entire system.
But let's face it, it is oil, just excess oil.
All right, thanks, Johnny. Johnny Knoxville. Live chat is on. There goes that little tornado again into the inlet of the #1 engine. Look at that, sucking that moisture right up into there. Same thing in forest firefighting. You'll see a fire tornado. It's very similar to that, but the what it's created by is a whole nother set of circumstances.
High bypass ratio turbos tend to not do that.
You see these little spinny doofers here in the inlets of the engine? Those are supposed to be bird dazzlers. They're hoping that they will help scare birds off. But it's pretty hard to scare a bird off when you're coming down on them at 180 knots on final or departure. Yeah, if you roll back a little ways, we just watched a very lurchy landing of an A380. There he goes. Look at that. He's rolling. He's out of here. And he's going to go get in line for departure. For a busy international airport, London Heathrow is very well controlled. It's extremely professional. You have to use exacting radio procedures at London. And by using exacting radio procedures, they run a very tight ship at London. If you listen to the ATC audio tapes at LA or even New York, it's there's a lot more use of slang terminology, a lot more yelling at each other, a lot more carrying on. Here at London and at most international big airport destinations, they run a very professional operation on the radios. In fact, it would be interesting to add the radio feed to this as well. Who we got on final here? That looks like another 787. Again, look at those wings. Julian, could you bring me the Radian glider down from up there? Look at that. Good flare. Perfect. Compress the shocks. Thrust reversers out. Ground spoilers up. Still a bit of moisture on the runway there. You're still got to figure your landing distance. Thanks, DL. You still got to figure your landing distance with a wet runway in these conditions here, even though it may not be raining currently. Yes, that glider right there, Julianne. Thank you. Parallel runway operations on the other side of the airport. Now here's the UMX Radian glider. You've seen this on a lot of my demonstrations. This is the wing that the 787 is emulating, a sailplane wing, high aspect ratio, long and skinny, with what we used to call the model airplanes, polyhedral built into it. A lot of bend built into the wing for additional stability means you don't have to have a big winglet out here for efficiency. You could just get away with it with the wing itself.
Where an aircraft's coming from or where an aircraft's going to.
That looks like a 777. I can tell by the APU, the tail end of the aircraft there.
We welcome all of your comments.
So again, we're watching BigJet TV's live broadcast from Heathrow this morning, Heathrow Airport, with my big mouth commentary over the top of it. One of these days, we're going to get together with Jerry.
So if there's a question that you've got that's on your mind,
A320 landing right now. We got and a 319 on final. So loads of Airbuses coming up next. The weather looking pretty good now at Heathrow this morning. There was that storm, Jorge. I don't know if it's coming or gone. Has it come or went yet? The storm at London. If somebody can look up the weather chart there and the weather radar, let me know. Here comes your Airbus, British Airways. Nice rate of descent. And flare right at the last minute. Boom. Perfect. Easy peasy day for landings at London Heathrow. It's coming. Okay, the weather is still en route. Big old, the whale, the 747 in the background. They're still running the 74. Speaking of some of these older aircraft that you're seeing still flying today, thanks, Sparky. Yeah, get your old RM100 out there running. Get your old dirt bikes going. The 737 MAX debacle is causing a lot of airlines to continue to run and operate their older aircraft much longer than they wanted to this year because of a lack of airframes. And in another update, I see United Airlines is offering pilots an entire month off with reduced pay because of the impact on the schedule of the coronavirus. The coronavirus is having such a huge impact on airline schedules, especially the flights in Asia. United Airlines has some of the most flights to Asia from the U.S. They've cut their schedule back so far that they're paying crews to not fly, which is a rare, very rare situation that will have a huge impact on the bottom line for this quarter's operation. 319 on final. That's right. Yeah, Jerry's talking about the comments on the Airbus landing system there. I missed that last comment. So many comments, I can't keep up with them.
So yes, Nicky, in answer to your question, young Kennedy got into a comment.
The Airbus aircraft like the 319 will tell you when to retard the aircraft, and that's a huge difference between Boeing aircraft and Airbus. Is you get this interesting retard call out of the 319 when it's time to bring the throttles back to idle, because in an Airbus aircraft the throttles don't move. You just set them into a detent, either takeoff or cruise, if I remember correctly, and they stay there. When the auto throttles are engaged in an Airbus aircraft, they do not move back and forth like this on a Boeing aircraft. You don't have that feedback of where exactly the throttles are on an Airbus aircraft. They're just set in a detent, and then you watch the EPR gauges move up and down. So when it's time to land and touch down, you got to physically, that's the only time you really physically move the throttles back out of that detent that you set at takeoff back to idle for the landing. And so thus the call out, retard, which isn't you guys. Stand up, boys. Say hi.
Hello.
There's Pete and there's Jake. You got to take these boys dirt biking. Okay, get out of the way, Pete. We got airplanes landed. Look at that. There's your 777. Isn't that a 777 right there?
Yeah.
Thrust reversers are open. Ground spoilers deployed. Auto brakes are probably on. There he's already deployed his ground spoilers. There's the telltale sign of a 777, that flat little line in the back of the aircraft.
Far more functional than the right-hand reverser there. Not sure what that was.
Yeah, your thrust reversers should come out simultaneously, balanced equally. You want them coming out equally so you don't set up any adverse yaw.
Young Kennedy, yes, marked up. There's white.
This is a weird one.
British Airways flowing everywhere. Where'd you go, Jenny? Did you fly off the map there?
It's not very accurate. It's lagging or something.
Well, yeah, we got lagging technology here. Here's what's important. The fact that we have this technology at all is just absolutely amazing. To be able to do a live podcast with a cell phone on a tripod at Heathrow with Flight Radar 24 data, all this technology just astounds me today. And then be able to broadcast it live with my golden voice on it, top of it. 319, and the A330. 777 pushing back from the old Continental. Remember, United merged with Continental here a few years ago as the airline industry went through its whole bankruptcy period. Now, when you look at the stack of aircraft coming into London today, Lambourne, I think that's the VOR they're coming in from. At London, on the arrivals at London, we talked about the noise abatement procedures at London. In order to set you up Look at 1, 2, 3, 4. See how closely spaced these are right now? The preceding aircraft will not get clearance to land until the aircraft in front of it is just about touching down. You won't get a clearance to land at London Heathrow until you're just so close to the end of the runway you can't stand it as a pilot. Out here in the States, they'd be clearing these guys to land way far away from the runway and making you responsible for your own separation. Here at London Heathrow, they do not clear you to land until the aircraft ahead of you is just clearing the runway, and that puts you right on very, very short final, so that if in the event that aircraft ahead of you does not clear the runway, you have to do a go around very close to the ground. He's getting rocked around a little bit here. Get it lined up, boys. I think this is a 319. Winds may be picking up a little bit. Left wing down. Boom. Good job. British Airways 319. The best landing we had so far today was the big A380. Jenny, what airline was that? Ethiopian Airlines? Just crushed it this morning, earlier in the live broadcast.
And over there as well.
Emirates? Okay. Emirates, that's right. Okay, so he's just cleared the runway. Where's the next guy? Okay, they're spaced out a little bit more today. Because of the weather today, the aircraft may be spaced out a little more than they usually are here at London. A330 aircraft. Turkish Airlines? Turkish Airlines. Now this wing still has a considerable winglet added to it. Bobbing and weaving a little bit there. With that telephoto lens, you can see every single move these pilots are making. Left wing down, keeping it lined up. Trucks are ready. Oh yeah, oh yeah, he's gonna roll it on, did you see that? That's the neat thing about a dual set of trucks like that, if I had an example, is if you do a great landing, you can just wheelie those rear set of trucks on there and then just ever so gently roll the trucks down into the full down position and just make a greaser landing out of those aircraft with those sort of landing gear systems. And that's a beautiful feeling, especially if you do it in a crosswind where you can touch down roll the upwind side and then set down the rest of the truck and then bring down the other side and do the same thing. Just sweet. First segment climb out there, very high deck angle. Get the gear up, cleaned up, and then they'll lower the nose and accelerate on out. Where are all the Cessnas? Can't afford it. They're too busy with big jets at these big airports. They don't want a bunch of small airplanes getting in there and clogging up the pattern. And so in order to do that, they charge huge landing fees that prevents cheap airline pilots like us with our private airplanes from coming into these big, busy airports.
A lot of people are unaware of it. I'll be putting up a little bit of a review. It's the VX1, Panasonic VX1. That's what you want to search.
What about the noise at takeoff? Well, you got to have noise at takeoff. That's going a different direction. Those folks are going to have to suffer the noise on takeoff. But you will do, it's a great question, you will do a reduced power setting takeoff to minimize the noise. So every takeoff is engineered to have just enough power to lose an engine and continue to climb out at your present weight, temperature, and pressure altitude on that one engine at that power setting. Of course, you always got that reserve bit of power setting you can add to it, but every takeoff is engineered to a reduced power setting to minimize the noise pollution over the neighborhoods below.
And don't forget, folks, you are a member on BigJet TV, doesn't matter
Perfect.
what level of membership you're at, you get a discount. You just come and stay here at the Renaissance Hotel.
Oh, was that another Airbus there, Jenny?
That's the deal that we...
How about a go-around for noise? Well, that's a go-around. That's a different situation. That's not always a standard procedure. So you just do what you got to do for a go-around, and you don't worry about the noise abatement in a go-around. And a go-around similar to a takeoff as far as noise abatement anyways.
Northern runway here. And
So
that's
320.
Call out. Can you do a van tour? Set up any other something you want
Crowd
me to
back
do
there.
that a little while back. So
Yeah, what airline is that?
it's something we could do.
It's a Dreamliner,
Just to show you
787.
guys,
But what flagship is that?
there's a lot more to it behind the scenes, though, it hasn't been said.
The fuel dumping at LAX, well, you'll have to watch my award-winning review on that. There are some lawsuits out on that, but basically, the bottom line is a 777 in that situation, you are not required, you do not need, there's no...
Way nicely there.
Do a little bobbing. Quit fussing with the stick and just hold it. Good. We've talked about that on an Airbus before. You don't have the positive feedback on the stick, and you can kind of set the thing up into a little bit of a PIO real easy. Royal Jordanian Airlines, thanks. On that fuel dumping episode, the bottom line is it's not a requirement for you to reduce the load, dump fuel to land under your maximum landing weight. It's okay to land over your max landing weight in a Boeing 777. It only requires an inspection. So something happened on that fuel dumping episode that we don't have the rest of the story as to exactly why they did what they did at LA. The bottom line, look at them stacked up there at Heathrow. Great telephoto lens. The bottom line is well, we just don't know yet why they did what they did. They didn't need to do what they did. You like this? Do this more often? All right. Got to get up earlier on Saturdays, and I have to get up and jump in the shower right away. Oh, look at this all day. Looks like another A320. Here's that nice, quiet, idle left base entry at idle to make a quiet approach into Heathrow with the power off. No snow in Northern California. We might get a little bit in the mountains tomorrow. Left wing low, boom, perfect.
It's Ben Stephen and his dad watching right now. Welcome back, Henry.
Watching arrivals live into London Heathrow, thanks to BigJet TV. Be sure to go over there and tell them Blanco Lirio sent you. And if you join up with BigJet, you can join up in his commentary for a small fee. And one day I want to look at him stand 1, 2, 3, 4. What do you see on the radar? Can you see all of them on the radar there? And what's that distance between them? I'd like to measure that, but it's just a constant stream of traffic into these big airports, and they have to keep things moving. And the only way they can keep things moving is if things on the ground keep moving. The gates continuously open up so they don't mog out the airport, maximum aircraft on the ground. They don't get all stuck waiting for a gate like you typically do at Los Angeles Airport, where you can land on time and then sit there and wait for 20, 30, 40 minutes for a gate. It's just so frustrating. Here at Heathrow, very professional operation. Things run very smoothly, and typically you're able to pop right into your gate. Speaking of Heathrow and 98% capacity, I just thought I saw a blurb in the news where the third runway at Heathrow is being shut down. The whole concept of building a third runway is being shut down for environmental concerns. Can somebody shed some light on that? All of these airports need more capacity. They're having a hard time keeping up with the demand for air travel. And this is just a typical day, and this is even going along with the coronavirus at present, where loads may be down, the schedule's still got to be flown. and it's just an extremely busy environment. So it would be a darn shame if that runway was not built at Heathrow. They really could use it. The world moves by air. That's right. It's the only way you're going to get around. That's a slow approach speed. Look at that. He's just hovering in the wind there, it looks like. Of course, it's a big aircraft, so it looks slower as well. Making those little bids to stay on glide slope. Just a little pitch down. Korean Air still pitching down. And ready to flare, boys. You're going to smash it on. Not bad. Oh, not too bad. He pulled that off. The difference between a good landing and a smasher is just that. Just that last half a second or two. It makes a huge difference in the quality of the landing.
Very minimal amount of reverse thrust, all on the brakes and the spoilers.
777. Yeah, when it's windy and blustery like this, keeping her steady without getting into a feedback loop on the controls is a real challenge. Less inputs, smaller inputs. It's like a little bit of a boxing match. You're just adding a little bit to the controls, not too much. Yeah, BigJet TV, he's quite a character. A lot of you that don't fly try to compare this to driving, and it's so completely different because in driving, you're putting the steering wheel to the rubber to the road. You've got direct mechanical contact with the surface that you're trying to control your car on. With aircraft, of course, you're just shoveling some spades around in air, and it's the entire control system is more like a spring-loaded system than it is anything else. If you talk to a flight controls design engineer, he'll refer you to spring mechanics as being a primary design consideration when designing aircraft controls. And you can sense that when you're flying it. You can feel that it's a springy, loosey-goosey operation as compared to driving. And in blustery, gusty conditions, it's very similar to riding a dirt bike in slippery conditions. Riding a dirt bike, you're very used to lack of traction. In windy, gusty conditions, you don't always have the traction, so to speak, in these aircraft, and so you got to balance it, just like a dirt bike in slippery conditions. To me, coming down a glide slope in really windy, gusty conditions is very similar to flying down a slippery, rocky, technical piece of downhill on a dirt bike where the bike is moving underneath you, you're balancing on top of it, you're letting the bike move, but you're controlling it down the path. He's still waiting on his gear there, waiting for the last minute to bring the gear down. Again, for noise abatement concerns and, well, it's general procedure, but idle power all the way in, keep the noise down, don't set off the noise sensors, don't let your airline get fined.
Oh, brilliant. Hey.
Yeah, so many planes at the same time, the same space, they got it all worked out. If you go to Flight Radar 24, oh, it looks like they changed the pattern. I think they're going back to Occam VOR to the south. They'll bring all these aircraft in and hold them in a holding pattern stack over a VOR. So it's one single location, but they're vertically stacked. And then they bring you down from the VOR stack, and then they feed you into the continuous descent arrival into London. So if you go to Flight Radar 24, well, I don't see anybody stacked up in the holding pattern right now. It looks like right now folks are able to come straight in, which is unusual. Which brings up the point of the recent speed run. Whoever was it British Airways that got in the jet stream that broke the trend Atlantic record recently. Or is it the Renaissance BigJet? You can break the transatlantic speed record by getting in the jet stream and shooting across the Atlantic at record speed. By the way, it's smooth air inside that jet stream, even at 200 knot tailwind, as long as you stay in the core of the jet stream. But then you can show up here at London Heathrow and end up holding at Ockham for 20 minutes and blow the whole record. So somehow they had to have that worked out so they were able to just shoot straight on in and land at the airport and break that record. Good job. As far as planning and breaking that record, it's not so much the pilots and the piloting skills that broke that transatlantic speed record. It really is, once again, the folks behind the scenes. It's the dispatchers primarily that work behind the scenes, that plot the flight route, that gets the aircraft to optimize his tailwind condition, and then of course all the controllers and everybody else to make sure he gets directly back into the airport without having to hold for 20 minutes and blow the record while he's waiting for landing aircraft. So it's really the folks, once again, behind the scenes that make things like that speed record happen, that make things like this just the daily operation of a London Heathrow Airport at 98% capacity just work as smooth as clockwork. All the pilot's got to do is this little piece of magic right here on short final. Hand flying the aircraft into a landing. Look at that forward truck is tilted forward. See how this plays out. Boom, boom, and then the center truck. So the outboard trucks touch first on this, what is this, a 330? No, it's bigger than that. What is that size of Airbus there? I'm unfamiliar with this one. Anyways, the main trucks touch down first, and then the center truck touches down afterwards. Let's see, environmental groups won. I missed that comment, but I think you're mentioning that environmental groups won their battle to prevent a third runway at Heathrow, which is unfortunate.
Quite empty. As we said, man, when was the last time that we saw empty gates like this?
Jerry's making a good point here.
Of course, that's mainly all the United section. That's where all the United jets park up.
So maybe today isn't such a busy day at London Heathrow. Jerry's making the comment that he's seeing a lot of empty gates here today. Maybe the coronavirus is slowing things down today here in London. The third runway is not approved. Court of Appeals granted contractors, I believe, were not taking up environmental obligations. According to Paris Treaty on Pollution. Man, we need more capacity. I mean, otherwise you're going to be traveling way far out of town to outlying airports. And that's the problem with the whole A380 situation. You got to get everybody at one place at the same time. And hey, you see that guy? You know what that is right there? That's the fire trainer. That's what the firemen that are based at London Heathrow. Each major airport has a fire rescue crew based there. They use this thing to practice on fires and air rescues on the ground. That's their training mock-up. Anyways, back to my other point. The whole problem with supersonic flight, the Concorde, and aircraft concepts like the Airbus A380, it's not so much the time in the air, it's the time getting to and from the airport and TSA and the gates, and that's the problem. That's a bigger problem in air travel than the speed of the flight itself. Get a little bobbin. Boom, left, boom, right. Good.
Did you guys forget our tree?
Yeah, thanks for the comparison. You get it if you're a dirt bike rider. You know what I'm talking about. And these landings and takeoffs are all hand flown, and the pilot with more hand flying experience in the light tail dragger aircraft is going to adapt to this quicker than anybody else. Because once you get outside of the landing or takeoff regime, you're on autopilot. And on these long transcontinental flights, you're on autopilot for hours and hours and hours, just droning along. And your landing skills will atrophy if you're flying a Boeing 777 type aircraft, especially if you got to split those landings up amongst 3 pilots. You can go out of landing currency, even flying a full schedule, and have to go back into the simulator to get your 3 landings every 90 days. We have the same landing currency in the airlines as in the Bug Smasher world. Yeah, we need some peanuts and popcorn to watch the live show here. What do we got? Another Airbus on final. A little bobbing and weaving with the gusty winds. Now transition your visual down the runway and flare. Good. Oh, flared a little early, a little floated a little long. Still floated along, and a touchdown. Good. So if you want to make that transition from the instruments to the runway, and then transition your visuals from the end of the runway, the spot where you're going to land, you want to look at where you're going. In the flare, you want to transition your visual sight line to looking way down the runway. Just like riding a street bike, you don't want to look at where you're fixing to crash. You want to look ahead and see what's coming ahead. You want to look through the corner. You want to look as far as you can down the road, not directly right in front of your front wheel. Same thing in landing. You don't want to target fixate on your landing spot. You do initially until you got it squared away. Then when it comes time to flare and land, you got to transition your visuals to down the runway. What do we got here? Turboprop. These guys can tend to get bobbed around quite a bit in the wind. If you look up Simple Flying News, one of these Flybe aircraft in Africa had a very recent interesting off-airport incident landing. Everybody's fine. Look how slow that thing approaches. Just floating there in the wind. These are the, 5-bladed props? Pitching down, maintain that glide slope. Keeping the wing down in the wind. Keep pitching down, keep holding that glide slope. Hold that glide slope. Now transition to your eyesight down the runway. Start your flare. And land. Good job. Good job. Flybe.com. Where's Flybe based out of? Yeah, how do relief crews on long hauls stay current in landings? Well, you end up having to go back into the simulators. What you got to do every 90 days. Of course, this is all automatically tracked, and if you don't get your 3 landings in 90 days, you got to go back into the simulator and do your 3 landings. But when you go back to that simulator, you don't just go in there and knock out 3 landings. You get a little mini check ride, and it's a great opportunity to refresh all your skills with a single engine approach, a go around, and maybe a single engine go around. Check this out. Qatar cargo. Wow. He's wheeling it. Aerodynamic braking. He's just going to ease that nose wheel down. Now you want to look at the thrust reversers on that one, a little different design. You can aerodynamic brake like that with the wheeling down the runway, hold the nose wheel off, but you want to gently continue to fly the airplane and fly that nose wheel down and gently set it down on the runway, because if you don't, you're going to run out of aerodynamics there on the elevator, and the thing's just going to come down like a ton of bricks, the nose gear that is. And you don't want to push it down, you don't want to nudge it down and get that moment of inertia heading down on that nose gear. Bam! Another interesting thing about that nose gear on these big jets is that nose gear is way behind you. You're in the cockpit and that nose gear is well behind you. And you got to think about that when you're taxiing these large aircraft around. That's why you'll see them from the cockpit. You could see a 90-degree turn. It looks like you can literally hang the cockpit out over the grass and then start your turn, and then be on center line on a taxiway. Big jets, you got to be careful how narrow of a taxiway you get yourself stuck on. Flybe's financial difficulties, bought by Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Connect. And then there was a question about the 7.5. I got to figure out how to make these comments go by a little slower. Your session is timed out on Flight Radar 24. I got an update coming on the Australian Transportation Safety Bureau preliminary report on the Coulson C-130. It's mostly in the can. I got to do some final edits, and I'll get that out later on this morning for you. Yeah, nothing new on that NASCAR deal. 106. Yeah, a lot of the fighter type aircraft. Thanks, dear. A lot of the fighter type aircraft used aero braking all the way down the runway. T-38s. That was a real fun thing, and that was a thing you had to do in an aircraft like the T-38 was that aero braking for landing. What do we got here? Another Airbus flare. Good. Perfect. Perfect timed. Oh, the camera. There's a big old 380. Look at that big whale. A380s heading off the schedule fairly soon, I believe. No news on the Addison situation. Yeah, F-16s, Hornets, all those fighter type aircraft use that aerodynamic braking, wheeling down the runway to slow down on landing. There's a slow speed setting on YouTube showing how to switch it on. I'll have to figure that out. If I start messing with it now, I'll probably mess up the whole live feed here. No, I saw a picture of Musk interviewing the fighter jets. Every time I think of Elon Musk, I think of him with an illegal smile, so to speak. And I should tune that in to see what he had to say about military jets. I think he was trying to tell him that the days of combat flying are over and you're going to be replaced by drones, I suspect. Which he may not be that far off. Hello, Pete. What's that? What do you think of this landing? Give us your take on that. Good? Bad? What do you think, Pete? Good? Give him a thumbs up? Yeah, I think that was a good. There you go. Yep, one day drones will rule the world. But it's still going to take human operators to design, build, and operate them. No, I did get a picture. A viewer did send me a picture of the Malibu gear up landing in San Jose yesterday. Does anybody know was that? Jake, quiet on the set, please. Does anybody know was that a gear problem, or did they forget his gear, or do we know yet? We have to get Pete out here with his cards, grading the landings. And we had a lot of fun with George and Ollie the other day. If you missed that live broadcast, I think we should have George and Ollie back. I should get that book from George, read it about his Vietnam flying experiences in the O2s and F4s, and then have him back for a live interview and ask him all about his Vietnam experience. Good. Good job. Anybody got an update on the winds here at Heathrow? It looks pretty tame out there right now. Let's see. I'm still looking at the 50, 20 after 240 at 16 knots. The future of the airline pilot career is, it's always a gamble. Yeah, eventually they won't need us. Eventually we'll be down to one pilot in the cockpit. And then many generations from now, it may be completely automated. And we're already seeing a lot of us are the last of the steam power gauge hand flying pilots, and we're seeing more and more reliance on automation. the pilot career is always changing. It's always changing. And it's headed, look at the size of those windshields on that. That's a good point. Boom. See the slope of that windshield? See the slope of the glare shield there in the pilots, in front of the pilots? That glare shield and that slope is very critical. I want to get together and do a video on automatic landings. And as part of the automatic landings, you got to have your seat height adjusted just right to match the slope of the glare shield, so that when you do break out of the fog, if you do break out, you can auto land in down to 300 RVR, very low visibility. But you need to set your seat in the jet like a target pipper. If you were firing a weapon, you need to set it up so that you're at the just right height and angle to visually acquire the runway at the 3-degree glide slope. And we'll talk more about that when I get around to doing a video on Cat 2 approaches. Automatic landings, landing in very, very poor visibility. Landing as low as 300 RVR, 300 foot visibility. Lufthansa's up next. Good job. So get over there to BigJet TV and give them some love and show them, tell them that Blanco Lirio sent you over there. Good, no buffering. All right, yeah, it should be as close to the Wi-Fi as it can be here.
In order to fill the gap of the shortage of neos. Wow, look at that. I know it's not going on, folks, but there's your anvil. Look at that, look at that. You can really clearly see that now. That's a cumulonimbus. Look it up on Google, folks. Sometimes
He's talking about the weather back here. I think this was the weather that is moving away from the airport at this time. Yes, the Turbo Levo is in, and I should do an update on that. That's where I've been spending a lot of my time lately. Lineup 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, doing the quiet approach into London Heathrow. Each aircraft being cleared to land at the very last moment, just as the preceding aircraft clears the runway. What do we got here? Another small jet. KLM? Good. All right, well, I got to get going and get these kids off to dirt biking this morning here. I hope you enjoyed the live feed here from London Heathrow. Looks like the winds and everything have calmed down. We'll come back to this on a even more blustery day. Great lens from BigJet TV. It's a BigJet just does a fantastic job. He's got a great camera and crew. I think he's got a whole crew. He sets himself on top of a van in the parking lot of the Renaissance Hotel there at London Heathrow. And he travels all around the world to provide this kind of exciting coverage to you. And as I'm learning, plane spotting around the world is a huge hobby by folks. And all this new technology just brings it up to a whole new level. And I mean, who doesn't enjoy going to the airport and watching planes all day? That's what gets kids in aviation to begin with. So don't mind those fences there at the airport. Do what you got to do to get out to the airport and enjoy aviation and get up there and talk to the pilots and ask them all your questions. They love to talk to you, show you around their aircraft, and maybe get you interested in aviation as well. All right, I got to wrap up that the latest video here. I'll get it out this morning. Take these kids dirt biking. Come here, kids, and say goodbye. Go back and watch that big old A380 Crusher landing. That was a good one. All right, we'll see you guys here. Thanks again for watching, and thanks again for the super chat today. See you here.
Okay.